The silence in the 47th floor penthouse was deafening. Not the peaceful kind of silence that comes with contentment, but the hollow, aching quiet that follows when everything money can buy has failed to fill the void where love should live. Isabella Chen Morrison pressed her face against the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Manhattan penthouse, watching the city lights blur through her tears as her 3-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan, screamed themselves hoarse in the nursery down the hall. For 18 months, sleep had been a stranger in their home, not since the accident that took David, her husband, leaving her to navigate single motherhood while running a billion-dollar tech empire. The twins hadn't slept through a single night since the devastating day, and neither had she. Dark circles had become permanent fixtures under her eyes, and her once sharp business instincts had dulled to a constant fog of exhaustion. Mrs. Morrison, the voice belonged to Maggie, the 8th nanny she'd hired in 6 months. Like all the others, Maggie looked defeated, her designer uniform wrinkled and her patience clearly stretched to its breaking point. "I've tried everything at the white noise machine, the aromatherapy diffuser, even that $3,000 sleep consultant routine you had me implement. They just won't settle." Isabella closed her eyes, fighting back another wave of tears. She'd spent more money on sleep solutions than most people earned in a lifetime. Child psychologists, pediatric sleep specialists, custom-made mattresses designed by NASA engineers. Nothing worked. The twins would drift off briefly, only to wake screaming, reaching for something that was no longer there. "It's okay, Maggie, you can go home. I'll take the night shift." The words came out mechanical, rehearsed from countless similar conversations. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you can't keep doing this. You haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in months. Maybe it's time to consider." "Consider what?" Isabella's voice cracked. "Boarding school? A residential facility? They're 3 years old, Maggie. They've already lost their father." "I won't abandon them too." After Maggie left, Isabella found herself alone with the symphony of her children's distress. She'd tried everything conventional wisdom suggested and then ventured into the realm of the desperate, hiring a team of behavioral specialists, flying in experts from Switzerland, even consulting with a shaman her grief counselor had reluctantly recommended. The only thing she hadn't tried was giving up, though the thought crossed her mind more frequently these days. The penthouse, with its minimalist design and museum-quality art, felt more like a beautiful prison than a home. Every surface was child-proofed, every corner padded, every possible need anticipated except the one that mattered most. Her children needed their father, and no amount of money could buy that back. It was nearly midnight when Isabella heard something that made her freeze mid-step on her way to the nursery. Silence. Not the temporary quiet that preceded another round of screaming, but actual, peaceful silence. Her heart pounded as she crept down the hallway, certain she would find her children awake but plotting their next vocal assault on her sanity. Instead, she discovered Emma and Ethan fast asleep, their tear-stained faces finally relaxed, tiny fists unclenched for the first time in months. And sitting in the corner of the nursery, in the old rocking chair that had belonged to David's grandmother, was a man she'd never seen before. He was perhaps 40. With calloused hands and kind eyes that held the weight of someone who understood loss. His janitor's uniform bore the logo of the building's cleaning service, and he was humming something soft and low, a melody that seemed to wrap around the room like a warm blanket. "Who are you?" Isabella whispered, her voice barely audible. Part of her was terrified, but a larger part was afraid that speaking too loudly might break whatever spell this stranger had cast over her children. The man looked up, and his eyes were full of apology. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I know I shouldn't be here. I was cleaning the hallway when I heard them crying, and—" He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I lost my own little girl 2 years ago. Leukemia. She used to have nightmares, terrible ones, and the only thing that helped was this old song my grandmother used to sing. When I heard your babies crying like that..." He stood slowly, careful not to disturb the sleeping children. "I'll go. I'll turn in my badge tonight. I know I overstepped." "Wait." Isabella's voice was stronger now. "What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus Washington." "Marcus, my children haven't slept through the night in 18 months. Whatever you did, whatever that song was." She looked at Emma and Ethan, peaceful in their cribs, and felt something she hadn't experienced since David's death, Hope, would you? Could you teach it to me? Marcus's eyes filled with tears. It's called Hush Now, my darling. My grandmother learned it from her grandmother, who was born into slavery. She said it carried the hopes and dreams of mothers who had to be separated from their babies, their love transcending distance and time. That night, for the first time in over a year, Isabella slept for 6 consecutive hours. She woke not to screaming, but to the gentle sounds of her children babbling contentedly to each other. The morning sun streaming through the windows felt different somehow, warmer and more promising. But when she tried to find Marcus the next day, the building supervisor informed her that he'd quit without explanation, leaving only a forwarding address for his final paycheck: a men's shelter on the Lower East Side. Isabella had built her fortune by being decisive, by solving problems quickly and efficiently. But standing outside the shelter 3 days later, she felt more nervous than she had during any board meeting or merger negotiation. The building was old and worn, a stark contrast to the gleaming towers of her usual world, but the woman at the front desk greeted her with genuine warmth. Marcus, oh honey, he's not staying here anymore, found himself a little apartment about a week ago. First time in 2 years he's had his own place. The woman, whose name tag read Dorothy, studied Isabella with curious eyes. You wouldn't happen to be the lady from the fancy building, would you? The one with the twins? Isabella nodded, surprised. He told you about us? Dorothy's face broke into a wide smile. Honey, that man hasn't stopped talking about those babies. Said helping them sleep was the first time he'd felt useful since his daughter passed. He's been working double shifts, trying to save up money to get properly certified as a childcare worker. Said he wants to help other families who are struggling like his did. The apartment Dorothy directed her to was in a modest neighborhood in Queens, a far cry from Manhattan's elite towers. Isabella stood outside the door for several minutes, unsure of what she wanted to say. When Marcus answered her knock, his face cycled through surprise, embarrassment, and something that might have been hope. Mrs. Morrison, how did you? Is everything okay? Are the twins sleeping? They are, thanks to you. Marcus, can we talk? His small studio apartment was spotless and sparse, furnished with items that looked like they'd been carefully chosen from thrift stores. But it was warm and lived with. Unlike her sterile penthouse, photos of a beautiful little girl with Marcus's kind eyes sat on every surface, and Isabella understood that she was looking at a shrine to love that transcended death. Her name was Lily, Marcus said softly, noticing her gaze. She would have been 8 next month. Tell me about her. For the next hour, Marcus shared stories of his daughter, her love of butterflies, her terrible knock-knock jokes, the way she used to dance to cooking shows on TV. Isabella found herself laughing for the first time in months, then crying as Marcus described the final weeks in the hospital, the way Lily had worried more about her daddy's sadness than her own pain. After she passed, I couldn't keep the apartment. Too many memories, you know? Lost my job at the accounting firm because I couldn't focus. Started drinking. Stopped caring about anything. It was Dorothy at the shelter who saved my life. Made me see that Lily wouldn't want me to give up. And now you want to work with children? Marcus nodded. I know it sounds crazy, but helping your twins that night. It felt like Lily was there with me, like she was showing me how to turn all this pain into something good. I've been researching programs, trying to figure out how to get certified, but, he gestured around the modest apartment, it's expensive, and I'm starting from scratch. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, an idea forming in her mind that was both terrifying and perfect. Marcus, what if I told you there was another way? What if instead of you getting certified to help other people's children, you helped me raise mine? The shock on Marcus's face was immediate. Mrs. Morrison, I appreciate the offer, but I'm just a janitor. Whoa. You're a father who understands loss. You're a man who walked away from a secure job because you were afraid you'd overstepped by showing kindness to hurting children. You're someone who carries his daughter's memory by trying to heal other people's pain. Isabella leaned forward. My children need more than a nanny, Marcus. They need someone who understands that love doesn't end when life does. The arrangement they worked out was unconventional by any standard. Marcus moved into the guest suite in Isabella's penthouse, not as an employee but as something harder to define, a part nanny, part family friend, inspired fellow traveler on the journey through grief. He brought his photos of Lily, his grandmother's rocking chair, and a guitar he'd played for his daughter during her treatments. The transformation in the twins was remarkable. Within weeks, they were sleeping through the night consistently, their days filled with laughter instead of tears. Marcus taught them the songs his grandmother had sung, told them stories about brave princesses and kind dragons, and slowly, carefully, helped them remember their father through photo albums and videos Isabella had been too heartbroken to share. But the changes in Isabella were even more profound. Marcus's presence reminded her that healing didn't mean forgetting, that love could expand rather than diminish. She began sleeping again, really sleeping, and with rest came the return of her sharp business instincts and creative problem-solving abilities. 6 months after Marcus moved in, Isabella made a decision that surprised even her. At the quarterly board meeting, she announced the launch of the Morrison Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to supporting families dealing with childhood illness and loss. The foundation would provide financial assistance, counseling services, and most importantly, a network of support that recognized grief as a journey rather than a destination. This foundation exists because a janitor taught me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought, she told the room full of executives and investors. It exists because kindness from a stranger can be more powerful than all the experts money can hire. Marcus was resistant to being the public face of the foundation, but Isabella convinced him that his story, their story, could help other families feel less alone. They appeared together on morning shows and at charity events, an unlikely pair whose friendship had grown from desperate circumstances into something beautiful and lasting. The foundation's first major initiative was a program that paired grieving families with trained companions who had walked similar paths. Marcus led the training, teaching volunteers that sometimes the most healing thing you can offer someone is simply sitting with them in their pain, humming an old song, and reminding them that they're not alone. 2 years after that first night in the nursery, Isabella stood in the same spot by the floor-to-ceiling windows. But everything had changed. The penthouse no longer felt sterile. Children's artwork decorated the walls, books and toys were scattered across expensive furniture, and the sound of laughter echoed through rooms that had once known only tears. Emma and Ethan, now 5, were in the kitchen with Marcus, making pancakes that looked more like abstract art than breakfast. They called him Uncle Marcus, though Isabella suspected they thought of him as something closer to family. They'd never stopped missing their father, but they'd learned that love doesn't have limits, that families can grow in unexpected ways. "Mommy, look," Emma ran to Isabella, syrup-covered hands holding up a misshapen pancake. "Uncle Marcus taught us how to make butterfly pancakes for Lily." It had become their tradition, making special breakfasts for Lily on holidays and birthdays, Marcus's way of keeping his daughter's memory alive while teaching the twins about love that transcends physical presence. Isabella had learned to participate without feeling like she was intruding on something sacred, understanding that grief doesn't divide when it's shared, it multiplies into something healing. That evening, after the twins were tucked into bed with their usual lullaby, Isabella and Marcus sat on the terrace overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below them like earthbound stars, and the sounds of traffic and sirens created the urban symphony they'd both grown to love. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night?" Isabella asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Every day, but not with regret, with gratitude. Lily always said that angels don't have wings, they have brave hearts that help other people find their way home. You brought us home, Marcus, not to this place, but to each other." As they sat in comfortable silence, both of them could almost hear it, the whisper of a little girl's laughter mixing with the wind, the echo of a father's love in the growing bonds of an unconventional family, the promise that tomorrow would bring new chances to turn pain into purpose. The Morrison Foundation would go on to help thousands of families, but its greatest success would always be measured in simpler terms: 2 little children who learned to sleep peacefully, a mother who remembered how to hope, and a father who discovered that love doesn't end with death, it just finds new ways to grow. Sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the smallest acts of kindness, performed by ordinary people who choose to see pain as an opportunity for healing rather than a reason to turn away. In a world that often feels divided by wealth and circumstance, They had created something precious and rare, a family born not of blood or marriage, but of mutual understanding that the deepest human needs can only be met by the deepest human connections. The last thing Isabella heard before sleep claimed her that night was the sound of Marcus humming softly in the next room, the same melody that had first brought peace to her children, now serving as a lullaby for the entire family they'd built together. It was the sound of love transcending loss, of hope growing in the spaces where heartbreak had once lived, of ordinary miracles that happen when people choose compassion over indifference. And in her dreams, she could swear she heard the laughter of all the children, now those still with them and those watching from somewhere beautiful, celebrating the truth that families are made not by circumstance, but by choice, not by perfection, but by the willingness to show up for each other when showing up is the hardest thing in the world.